Craft cocktails, from the classics to zero-proof drinks, are all around us. But what if we told you that craft cocktails are actually a relatively recent addition to the culinary scene? My name is Toni Tipton Martin, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Cook's Country at America's Test Kitchen. I want to introduce you to a podcast mini-series I'm hosting called 100 Proof, The Journey of the American Cocktail. Over 6 episodes, we'll look at how mixed drinks offer us a window into what was happening in America during the dawn of the cocktail. We'll then take you to the present day to contemplate what forces led to our modern cocktail renaissance. And along the way, we'll of course be sharing cocktail recipes with you. Subscribe to Proof from America's Test Kitchen so you won't miss the first episode. It drops on Thursday, May 23rd. Again, that's Proof, Proof, from America's Test Kitchen. Cheers.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Hearst Ranch is a proud sponsor of the Heritage Radio Network. Learn more about Hearst Ranch at HearstRanch.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cutting the Curd on Heritage Radio Network. I'm your host, Joe Salonia. Our next guest is Vanessa Chilaka-Kalb, who is the owner of Agnes Cheesery and Restaurant, located in Pasadena, California. The establishment blends modern American cuisine with a strong emphasis on cheese and a legit cheese counter in a beautiful, sun-drenched space that was once a historic horse stable of the Pasadena Fire Department. Vanessa, welcome to Cutting the Curd.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And is this your first time on Cutting the Curd, I understand?
It is.
Well, welcome to the show. And so you are the owner of Agnes Cheesery and Restaurant in Pasadena, California. And I've met your husband. I got to meet you in person in your natural habitat. And I met your husband. I got to have a meal. I got to see the cheese counter. And your husband, Thomas, also has a hand in this too. Am I correct? Are you both owner-operators?
Correct. Yeah, we're co-owner operators. I'm a classically trained chef, but I switched over to cheese maybe 6 or 8 years ago. And I handle the cheese and retail aspect, and he handles the kitchen and all things food.
Wow. So you're like a tour de force on the food front. And how long have you been doing the cheese portion of your career? Did it start with this restaurant or cheesery, or did it start prior?
It was prior. We met in San Francisco, and all of the beautiful creameries and dairies out there. So it was easy to get out of the city and do a little trip on the weekends and just eat a bunch of cheese. That was probably 2016 or so, 2015. And I started taking classes at the Cheese School of San Francisco. I met Carrie Fisher and all of the beautiful gals that run that place. And it kind of took off from there. I just fell in love with everything that cheese is and could be.
Wow. Well, hey, you mentioned Carrie Fisher. What a legacy. She's sadly missed from our community, but the value you found in her work and has probably played a part, like you just said. So that's a beautiful grace note to her life and legacy in cheese. So how does your partnership work with your husband? How much do you attack different aspects of the business separately, divide and conquer? Because it sounds like you're both kind of in the front end, and how does that work?
We play to our strengths. I used to cook, and so I have opinions and suggestions, but ultimately it's his ideas, and I just help him kind of iron it out and run with it. If there's something that I need as far as prepping for the cheese shop and all of the things that we kind of pack and make in-house, like our pimento cheese, our marinated olives, his team takes care of that for the shop. But we kind of play to our strengths. He runs with the savory food. I do the cheese. And get to tell him what cheeses are really great right now. I get to suggest cheeses that will go into a dish, and cheese plays a huge role in the menu. Outside of just a cheese plate, there are lots of dishes that have cheese in it, and I get to decide or suggest what cheese would be, a really good supporting role in that dish.
Mm-hmm.
And I also do a lot of administrative work, and he does a lot of repair and maintenance work. So he's the handyman. I'm the administrator.
Yeah, those are two roles that can't go without owning and operating your own restaurant. I mean, this could be a theme in and of itself. Just the fact that you have different skills. You're married and you own a food operation. That could be its own topic. But I don't want to digress too much into that. But I want to stick to the main topic of how you run your Cheesery restaurant. And for those who have not visited, you read the title of the show, you hear the name of the restaurant, you go to the website, check out the layout. I mean, this space you're in, it's to me just beautiful. It's sun drenched. You walk in, there's some tables. You immediately notice the cheese counter, beautiful selection. That if it was just a cheese shop, and then you have all the sundries and the cheese accompaniments and things that go with it. If that was just a shop, to me, that's a shop right there. And then to the left, a bar, along, some stools, more seats. Then there's another production bakery or kitchen in the back that you could visibly see. There's people working all around you that seem to be in harmony that are just in lockstep with making the place hum and work. And then in the back you have, I think, outdoor space. To me, just growing up in the food business, just looks like a dream space, just straight up.
Yeah, it was a dream come true to build it and see it come to life.
So what inspired you to start this? Did the space inspire you? Did you have a vision first and then you found the space? What inspired you both to start Agnes Restaurant and Cheesery? How did you come up with the name even?
When I discovered the Cheese School of San Francisco, took several classes and worked with Kiri and Noreen there, we actually ended up leaving the country for a few months, packed all of our things, sold half of our other things we didn't want to keep, and then just left the country for Southeast Asia. And while we were there, was talking to him about what we wanted to do next, because I can't turn that part of my brain off. We're supposed to be on vacation and discovering ourselves. And I'm, of course, talking about work. And I said, I think I don't want to go back to restaurants. I want to see where cheese can take me. And I think I want to open a cheese shop someday. And he said, well, maybe I can open a little restaurant behind your cheese shop. And we thought it might be a little cheese shop with a door that went back to like a tiny restaurant that's like a speakeasy style. And we ran with that idea, kind of played around with it. And then we talked to who is now our business partner about this concept. And he really liked it. He showed us this space and we said, absolutely not. It's too big. And he said, well, I like the concept enough that we could try this anywhere. And we ended up comparing it to the brick walls. There's no skylights. There's no back patio. There's no XYZ. And we're just thinking, if we like this space and we care about it so much, why don't we just make it work within this space? And it's the closest thing at the time that we could find that was similar, that we could assimilate it to, is Italy. And at the time, Healdsburg Shed. We walked into the shed. I don't know if you've ever been there. And it was exactly like what we were like, oh my gosh, this is what we wanted. We couldn't articulate. We had a vision of it. We just couldn't articulate it. And we were like, this is it. Just swap out all the gardening for cheese. And so we asked our architect when we told her about this idea, and she walked the space with us, and she said, this is just enough space for all the things that you want to do. And we're like, what do you mean this is just enough space? Of course, today we're running out of space every day, but we told her about the shed. She took a lot of inspiration from that, and she was able to pull all of the details that we wanted to make sure that included, especially as a functioning restaurant, as a functioning cheese shop. We said it needs to have this, it needs to have that. And then she was able to make it pretty and hide all the spaghetti, as she calls it, of a restaurant.
Well, I think you've achieved that. And I think the design is also notable, which I hope we'll touch on in a minute. But I do want to kind of emphasize something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned that you're on vacation, you don't want to talk about work, but isn't like really what is it work? Is work work? Or what do we know this word work to be when it's your passion, your desire, your vision? I hope that this word work isn't like always, like a dirty word, right? You can't bring up work when you're on vacation. But if you're both there and you both love talking about whatever it is, then fine, define it that way, right? But like, yeah, there's this like stigma to want to, rest your brain, I guess. But like, that's where you were at. And maybe if it wasn't for that trip, you wouldn't have had the vision to create what you've done.
Yeah.
And when you were, so how much of it was a transformation? Because this place has a pretty cool history, huh? So this was a fire department that operated with horses back in the old timey days.
Yeah.
And I saw the guts of that there, and it, has high ceilings. It's really cool. So was the space really just a blank canvas, or were there some challenges that you had to make some modifications for?
There were challenges. It was not a blank space. It was an office building before we took it over, and we had to take it to the walls, dirt, and just the ceilings. Our contractor had to assess what was damaged and what was still salvageable as far as the bricks and the wooden beams. It is a truss ceiling, and it is historic as well. So the city of Pasadena had us restore it to specific specifications that had to be approved meticulously and at certain stages of the project. So our architect and contractor had their work cut out for them. It was built in the early 1900s, 1922 to be exact. It was the horse stable for the fire department of Pasadena. It took up one whole city block of the horse stable, the fire department itself, where they kept all the carriages. And when we dug up the flooring, we found horseshoes and train ties. It's been many things throughout the decades, but we had to dig up the ground, expand all the piping, the sewage, the plumbing, get new electricity in. And the electricity alone took a year to finalize with the city on how to upgrade the power to get us enough power to operate a restaurant. And we came into some challenges when we found out that the roof was sagging by 9 inches.
Oh, wow.
And then also there was a global pandemic that slowed things down.
Oh boy. So all right, let's back up. What year did you open the restaurant again?
2021.
Hey. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're actually designing, and you started designing and signed the lease or whatever before the pandemic kicked in, or during, or?
We saw the space in 2017 or 2018.
So there's a real pandemic story here going on with as far as places that have opened and sustained since the opening.
Yeah, we saw it, started designing, had to get a lot of approvals. That didn't work. So many, I guess, city officials had left or been transferred. And so anybody who saw our plans after the first person either approved or said, we need to fix this, then said, oh, actually, this is not correct. You need to fix this. And we're like, wait, we just went through this with other people. And so it took a long time to get everything out of the city and approved. We started construction in January 2020. Wow. And we all know what happened a couple months later. But everything was locked in. We had all of our subcontractors locked in, all the materials prices locked in. We had approved it all. It allowed us, though, to adjust certain things. We were able to upgrade our HVAC system and filters. We changed everything to all automatic hand sinks and toilets, things like that. We were able to say, okay, what is the future of restaurant and dining? What is it going to look like? Let's just implement it now as opposed to getting it done later.
That sounds smart. But wow, what kind of, I mean, to put it lightly, it sounds like kind of a nightmare, but you had the intestinal fortitude to work your way through that. And then with the theme being restaurant and cheesery, I want to, make sure we're emphasizing how many square feet are dedicated to the, or did this change when you were designing that you knew you had the cheese area and like the cheese shoppy area with other things to buy? Like if someone wanted to come in and leave with something, or a diner who wants to then go home with something, how many square feet are dedicated to that part of the operation versus the straight up restaurant seating bar area? Like, is it percentage or square footage wise, would you quote?
I'd say, so the whole footprint is just under 6,000 square feet. So it's 5,000 and change. And I'd say maybe 1,000 of it is the cheese shop.
The cheese shop, which also functions as a cheese preparation kitchen for folks that are ordering dishes in the dining room as well, right? It's not just
Correct.
like they're not like a door closes and they're in there. I mean, they're part of like the restaurant operations. And at the same time, if someone wants to buy a pound or two or half a pound, quarter pound, whatever, they're at the ready to take care of that guest as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the nice part, is that people get to see what is happening. It's an open concept. There's no wall. There's very little space to hide. It's all the nitty gritty that is behind walls, but everything is open so that we can have the interaction with the guests, and the guests get to see what it is that we're doing and get excited for what's about to come.
Yeah. And, again, the menu. I mean, so for me, it's like a playground. I'm a chef by trade. I'm a cheese professional. I live in both worlds, and whether even if it's just in my head, I live in both worlds. So I love reading a great menu. I mean, you have some incredible signature dishes that's I haven't gotten the chance to taste all of them, but you have like a cornbread eclair. You have a Lamburger helper. You have radiatore or radiator pasta and red sauce with burrata. You have a pimento cheese omelet. And then you have cheese plates that you serve. But that's just the dining room menu, right?
Correct.
So tell us about how that plays into the cheese program, or tell us about the menu.
It's a playful rendition of everything that we want to eat as chefs. Everything that we grew up in the 80s and 90s kind of eating, but was told that it's bad for you because it's from a box or the cheese is made out of a powder. But we've chefed it up a little bit. We like to joke that maybe grandma went to culinary school and this is what she would have cooked you.
Yeah. I love the Lamburger helper name the most. I think that one jumped out at me.
Yeah.
What's in that, by the way?
So we make our own pasta. It's the muffaldine shape. So it's a narrow, it looks like lasagna noodles, but it's
like
more
the top
narrow.
of the lasagna, like the top of the Ronzoni lasagna noodle almost, right?
Yeah. And then we have Anderson Ranch's lamb in there that we braise. And it's a very humble dish. It doesn't look very pretty, but it is so delicious when people have it. And what people don't understand is that it takes 3 days to prepare that lamb. We first have to season it, let that dry out. Then we smoke it on the wood burning hearth, and then we braise it. And then the next day we, peel all the meat, shred it all, and then mix it with more tomato paste. So it takes time to make this braise. Somebody has to make all the noodles, and then we use really good cheese. When Thomas said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this pasta," we bring it back every winter time. And originally I suggested Aries because it's sheep's milk. But we already use Aries in a different salad. And so I said, let's do Sagittarius. It's from Avery and it's sheep and cow, and it's creamier cheese. And I like it a lot. And so we're able, he just goes shopping in the cheese shop for any cheese that he wants. So we do have Aries on a salad, Sagittarius on a pasta, burrata on a different pasta. We use Prairie Breeze on our loaded baked potato dumplings. And we make the pimento cheese in house. So we put that on the omelet. And, we just try to incorporate as much cheese as possible into the menu because it is a cheese shop and restaurant.
It's a cheesery. I mean,
Yes.
you're speaking to you're preaching to the choir here, right? I mean, this is it. You got the right crowd. So you have all this legit gorgeous cuisine going on. You and Thomas are the chefs behind it. I should mention that I've visited and eaten, and I forget the dish I had because I'm on the spot here. I should have noted it, but I just remember leaving. It might have been a chicken dish, even on with salad. It might have even been where I was taking a break from cheese. It might have been one of your cheeseless dishes. But you have cocktails. You have a great menu. Point is, you have a great menu. You have cocktails. You have wine. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. And you could these all could stand totally on its own. And then you have what I noticed to be a legit cheese counter. How many cheeses are in your cheese program?
Somewhere between 50 and 65, depending on the season and time of year.
And so are some of the cheeses just simply meant to be sold in retail, or do all of them play a dual role?
A little bit of both. Most are retail, and then some things I do bring in specifically for the restaurant. But if somebody were to ask for it, I have it. I might not put it in the case, but I do have it to sell.
Gotcha. So this is because there's others, in the USA, I've come across a good handful of shops that either in disguise and you don't realize it, but they're serving quite a bit of food, or they are in fact a restaurant or a wine bar where you're sitting down and they have a cheese program. What would be your advice for at least, or how do you select cheeses knowing that it's on the menu? Is there like a certain rule, like 1, 2, 3 rule, or the cheese must be serving a dual purpose, or if it doesn't, it must be fitting this criteria? How do you select the cheeses in your cheese program with a menu? Like, what's going to help you decide what to put on the menu and in the cheese case, or if something just must exist as a cheese in the cheese case?
A lot of cheeses I've had before, and I knew that I wanted to work with again when I was in San Francisco and working at Fisher's Cheese and Wine. We would have slates full of Loire Valley cheeses. And I thought everybody in Pasadena would also love Loire Valley cheeses. So I brought in every kind of Loire Valley cheese, goat cheese. And it turned out they really only like 2 kinds. And so that's eliminated itself. And then when things are seasonal or special, I bring it in, our PR team markets it, and we push it. The great thing about having the restaurant is that almost every table orders a cheese plate, and it's a monger's choice. So we get to I get to move through a lot of cheese because I know what's been in for a little bit longer than I would have liked, or I know what's really good right now, or what's really seasonal and really special. And people are always asking for a menu to select the cheeses, but I get bored and I change it every week. And so it's hard for me to write a menu of 60 cheeses that might change. And most people know the basics, maybe a cheddar, maybe a Gouda or a brie, but this is opening people up to other things that they might not expect. And they'll come back. We handwrite a card that goes out with every cheese board that tells people what is on that board. I've had people come back almost like playing cards. They'll lay out like 8 of them and put stars next to the ones that they really like and say, which of these do you have? And we'll knock off whatever they want. And it's a great way for them to come back to the shop and say, oh my God, I really enjoyed that cheese. I want to take some of it home. And then I can continue the conversation with them and say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you enjoyed that. It's really seasonal. This is what the maker does, or why it's so special. Every monger goes to the table and talks about the cheese board that they're presenting and every item on it, because it's a connection. And people are afraid of cheese. And it's I'm trying to break that, stigma and barrier of people who are just afraid to talk to a monger. It's the same thing that people are afraid to talk to like a sommelier and ask for wine because they don't want to sound uneducated. And it's okay if you say, I like brie. I want to try something different though. And that's where I come in. And that's my job, is to tell the stories of the cheesemakers and be a matchmaker and get people involved that way.
Does your team working in the cheese area, the cheesemongers, are they also helping you in that task of communicating on the dining room floor?
Yeah, they're saying some people don't get this, or they don't like this, or people are asking for this. And so I will listen to these suggestions. A lot of the cheeses that I bring, mostly it's cheeses that I want to eat. To be honest.
Fair.
And then some things, as I'm getting to know, like you, when you bring in cheeses to me, I'm like, oh my God, I would have never picked this. And this is delicious. Or I hear your stories that you're telling me about the makers. And I'm like, I need to tell these stories to the end consumer and have people understand why this makes this cheese so special. Why is this cheese expensive or cost this way? It's because of XYZ. And so that's really how I pick cheeses. I get bored, and then I also need to change it up. And our ethos as well is also working with really small makers that you can't get anywhere else, or not get a lot of anywhere else. I can't compete with larger shops and larger companies on pricing, but at least if I have really special and fun things in the shop, people know that they can always come here and get something really good and something that they can't get anywhere else.
I hope that part of our industry always stays healthy. And I like to think the big stages or the big venues that are pushing the bigger brands maybe are helping your maybe a pool of first-time cheese eaters. That maybe that helps introduce them, and then out of that pool, some connoisseurs are born. And then when they seek out better choices in better condition and in better composed dishes or areas to find different ways to discover it, they are turning to the independent shops and the restaurants or the cheeseries, if you will, or the small shops.
Exactly.
So hopefully there's room in our market, if we're doing it right, to just keep doing the good work, run our own race. Let's just put a pin in this, though, because I want to take a short break right after we hear a message from our sponsor.
Hearst Ranch is a proud sponsor of the Heritage Radio Network. The Hearst family has been raising cattle on the rich, sustainable native grasslands of California's Central Coast for over 150 years. Piedra Blanca Rancho in San Simeon is the original Hearst Ranch, founded by George Hearst in 1865. George's son was the famous publisher William Randolph Hearst. In addition to being known for building the iconic Hearst Castle, William was, like his father before him, an avid rancher. In his words, I would rather spend a month at the ranch than any place in the world. Thanks to one of the largest land conservation easements in California history, a joint effort with the California Rangeland Trust, the American Land Conservancy, and the state of California, the working landscape at Hearst Ranch will be preserved forever. Learn more about Hearst Ranch at HearstRanch.com.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're here chatting with Vanessa Tilaka-Kalb, owner of Agnes Restaurant and Cheesery in Pasadena, California. Vanessa, we were just talking about how you mentioned that you try to put things on your menu that are different, that are not found in big channels, big stores. So you want to connect with the producer. Does this reach back to, is this sustainability a key theme, or how are you realistically incorporating sustainability practices into your sourcing for cheese?
Yes, I think if the makers from start to finish all have a goal of making the industry and their carbon footprint better in the universe and in the industry, then it's something that I want to get behind. And if I can tell that story of this is grass fed. They recycle this. They use their expelled whey to then reheat the milk that's coming back in from the waste is huge in cheese making, and especially in the dairy industry or cattle industry with methane and all of that other stuff. Mm-hmm. And educating people on how it could be better and how we are trying to be a part of making it better. I know that plastic is a huge issue right now. And unfortunately, with cheese, we eat, or any food, we eat with our eyes first. If I covered the cheese in butcher paper because it's paper, nobody would be able to see it. So as much of the plastic that we're using, I am offsetting it with using Formaticum Zero cheese paper that is biodegradable, compostable. I try to use as much, all of our to-go containers are all biodegradable, compostable as well. So we spend the extra time and money and effort into making sure that if we're going to do this, we need to do it right.
I love that. Love it. And yeah, that Formaticum Zero paper is special stuff too. So some obvious questions, menu related, but also with cheese is, do you have a grilled cheese on the menu? Do you have a fondue on the menu, depending on the time of the year? Or do you have both?
It's funny because people ask about a grilled cheese, and right now the capacity of what we're doing, we can't really support a grilled cheese, but we do have a Cuban melt and a chicken Parmesan sandwich.
Okay.
And we only have one griddle, so we can't really do a grilled cheese right now. We are working on it. So we're trying to figure out how a really excellent grilled cheese and tomato soup can come off of the cheese counter. And
I like that.
We don't do fondue, but we have raclette during the winter time.
All right. So you scrape or you melt the slices? How do you do the raclette?
Scrape.
You scrape? Okay.
We put it right in front. People walk by, they open the door first of all, and they're like, what is that smell?
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
And then they walk by and they say, okay, I'll have one of that.
Yeah, I like that. They're already sold when they walk in.
Yes.
But I had a feeling like it was kind of like a little hidden question, but hopefully an easy one was the grilled cheese, because I didn't notice a grilled cheese on your menu. And I was just wondering if it was me, and it sounds like so part of your logistics or design, but also maybe is it you want to maybe you want to offer things that are more, because I just high level skill in so many of your dishes. It's not just like you're just making sandwiches over there. Not that there's not anything wrong with a good sandwich. I mean, that's also a highly skilled thing that's taken for granted as well. So let's really kudos to you for just finding your way. But the design of your, I noticed some really clever little designs that were near the cheese counter area, just something that saved the team some steps. It could have been something near the sink or where you stored things. Did you design every inch of that area? And can you speak to anything that you've designed that was totally clutch in saving time, work, and effort that you would want the rest of our audience to hear?
I'm going to start off with the cheese case. I didn't design the cheese case, but I did see it when searching for deli cases. I've worked in shops that have the domed front, which means that there's not very much room on top to display anything. And then the whole case just kind of slides forward, which I've lost product on top that way. And so I knew that I wanted a squared edge case. We found Reveal Structural Concepts, and the exhaust for, I know this is very technical, but the exhaust for the refrigeration itself is supposed to come out through the front, but we wanted to put displays and a beautiful like waterfall marble in the front. So we asked for it to be redesigned to have the exhaust come out through the back. Wow. And so that was accommodated. During traveling in France, you could walk right into the shop and see all of the cheese, and you can actually touch it, unlike in the States where there are health code violations.
Yeah.
you can touch the cheese, and they would just pull the cheese right out of the refrigerated case that I was standing 6 inches from. And they would have these drawers that had cheese paper in it all ready to go, almost like a gift wrapping station. And I was like, oh my God, this is genius. I need to have this. And so we incorporated a drawer with cheese paper under the cheese wire where it's being cut. And then the cheese wire itself, I've heard of many accidents of people cutting hard cheeses and the cheese wire flipping back onto them and breaking teeth or hitting them in the face. And so I had the bar that secures down the cheese wire welded into the stainless steel so that it stays there. And then on the other side, the wooden island, there's no bar there, but that's because we're only cutting smaller, already portioned cheeses for the cheese boards. So there was a lot of kind of chef intuition and requests that went into designing of the kitchen, like where the paper towels get dispensed from, the automatic hand sinks, things like that. And then some other things where, as a cheesemonger, the movements of, having to walk so many steps to get to the scale or to the register or going around the counter. And those were all things that kind of were put into consideration when we were designing the space.
And how much of the menu comes out of the actual cheesemonger prepping operational area? Like, how much of the menu are they responsible for? Are they making salads there? Are they, just adding the cheese and they'll get past the item and then they'll finish it? Or what's happening there? Like, if you have how many staff members are in that area?
I have 6 mongers total.
And what are they? How much of it is 100%? What percentage is mongering versus menu support for items getting picked up?
Oh, they do everything. All the mongers do everything, but we only do what comes from the cheesery, which is cheese boards, tin fish, marinated olives, a nut mix, things like that. And we build the boards, run the boards to the tables, help guests who are just looking for cheese to take home, wine support, restocking, all of that. And that's during brunch and dinner. We also have what we call cheesery hour or cheesery time. And that is during the day. We've kind of started to refocus on just the shop being a shop and having the opportunity for people to come in and have an afternoon sandwich or a cheese board and then go back to work. And then dinner doesn't start until 5:30. So the shop operates as what it is, a shop. And so we have very simple sandwich on baguette, 2 ingredients, like prosciutto and butter, and then cheese boards and tin fish, things like that.
So it sounds like you've been really careful about how not to double up workflows. You're really partitioned. Like, for instance, the Lamburger helper or the radiator pasta with the red sauce and burrata is really all being done in the kitchen from start to finish. And then the cheese area is concentrating on a different portion of the menu where cheese boards are the priority. Retail customers are the priority.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And the kitchen will order cheese from us. So say I need a wheel or a pound of X, and we cut it for them or bring it in for them. And because the mongers are skilled with the wire or a double-handled knife, we take care of that for them so that they can focus on cooking.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've cracked the code a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many places out there really got it down like that, but maybe I need to visit more. But this theme, because what I notice is that almost any cheese shop you go into, in one way or another, has another kind of ancillary thing that's supporting the cheese sales. It could be something as simple as the cheese boards, but many of them are doing a grilled cheese at the very least. Yeah. Some of them are fashioning their own, maybe their own, mozzarella bocconcini salad, and they're creating a higher value of that. Some are making fruit preserves and serving it in a terrine. You saw in France some of those shops. They really go all out. They might wire down Roquefort and put little layers of membrillo in between Roquefort. Or other sheep cheeses and display things in terrines. And, the setup that you see in France and even other parts of Europe, I think, can serve as inspiration. And yeah, sadly, in our country, there's too many people maybe spoiling the good for most, or just the bureaucracy of the health codes of each state and county, and every state is just too complicated. But one can dream, right? Or that's a reason to go to France, to get up close and personal, where you're surrounded by the cheese, right? That's kind of the feeling, isn't it? When you walk in the shop like that, the cheese is around you.
Yes.
And the monger's with you in the aisle. Yes. There's no counter separating you. You're in this room of cheese together, which I love. Maybe someday we'll get more versions or some hybrids in that direction. But what also I'm curious to know, when you were doing this you have a kind of seamless experience between dining and cheese shopping. Do many of your guests visiting the restaurant, do you find, what percentage of them know they were there to buy cheese, and what percentage would accidentally say, I'm taking some cheese home. I didn't realize I love cheese this much. Before I leave, I'm going to go ahead and grab something on my way out. Like, how many are just in and out with a retail purchase versus sitting down and buying?
When we first opened, we had a few guests that only came into the shop and bought cheese every Friday, or throughout their lunchtime would come in for a couple of things, and then had never eaten in the restaurant before. And I was like, you need to come and have dinner. It's a different experience. It's a new ball game over there. And then we would have some people who have only eaten dinner and rarely get anything at the shop. But that's far and few now. Most people come in to have something for dinner and then visit the shop afterwards. I'd say the restaurant is kind of the leading, quote unquote, business within the four walls, but the cheese shop can kind of hold its own. And it's the thing that makes the restaurant really unique, is that people can go and shop afterwards. And usually it's an after dinner, I'm going to get a cheese, or, oh my gosh, they have tin fish. Look at all these chocolates. And we get to connect further that way after their meal as well.
It's almost like they have to walk through the souvenir shop to leave, right?
Exactly.
Like one of those things. In a way. I mean, not really.
It in the beginning and then walk through it at the end.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. The way you have it laid out is just, to me, pretty ingenious. How do you train your staff then to handle all these distinct yet interconnected roles of serving in a restaurant and assisting in your cheesery folks are your cheesery folks. But so the folks in the restaurant, like let's say you're a wait staff member for the restaurant, their job is pretty clear. They're mainly restaurant oriented. They're picking up on in maybe different areas, and they're serving the guests. But training, like the back of the house, do you have a lot that cross over and decide, hey, I want to work in the cheese department, or vice versa? Does that happen much?
It doesn't actually, and it's something that I've kind of pushed at the local culinary school here. We get a lot of interns that will come and do their externship at the restaurant, and they've asked me to do a cheese class there before, and I always tell them, hey, I know you guys want to do your externship in a restaurant, but the shop is also a way to be food adjacent and learn something different. I know you all are going on this culinary program, but not every restaurant you're going to come across is going to have a cheese shop for you to learn something else, something new. So I try to push it that way. But the chefs and the cooks usually don't come into the cheese shop, mostly because then it became a little bit difficult. They were just coming in and asking for random bits of cheese, and we were never knowing where it was going to. Or, a cook would say, oh, I need to make blue cheese dressing. Can I get blue cheese? And the staff, the mongers, don't know what I'm paying per pound for certain things. So they've handed over really expensive blue cheese. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's just going to be made into salad dressing. Like, I have other blue cheese that can be perfect for this. So that was a discovery that we made a SOP for.
So there are some cooking cheeses that are not on the cheese counter. So that's probably a good insight. But are there so there are cheeses on the cheese counter that are just only for retail, not on the menu, and then are there some cheeses in the walk-in that only remain on the menu and not present inside the cheese program?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now it's raclette. It's going on our smash burger or a patty melt that we have on Thursday nights. I bring it in for the patty melts, but if somebody came to the counter and said, "Do you have raclette?" I do have raclette. I can sell it. It's just not in the case.
Okay.
Same thing with Riojana and brick cheese.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That goes into kitchen, like restaurant dishes.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody was like, I'm making deep dish pizza, what do you recommend? I'll say, I have brick cheese. I can sell you that.
Right. So you got this dovetail thing happening, and then on each side there's kitchen only, mostly stock, and then cheese program only cheese case items as well. So that maybe would you say that's an advantage to managing inventory and supply chains, because you have so much, what seems like a lot of flexibility to me. How does it work? Do you view it that way?
Yeah, a lot of vendors that restaurants would normally work with don't necessarily have a wide array of good quality cheeses, artisan cheeses to put, let's say it's a French restaurant, French bistro, and they really want to put a cheese board on their menu. Some of their vendors might not have good French cheeses on their list. And I can get all the cheeses, and there's no minimum. I meet the minimum every time. The restaurant wouldn't have to say, "Oh, I have to spend $500 in order to get this one or two cheeses that I need."
Yeah.
And then therefore having to buy more than they need, which then we all know as soon as you cut a wheel of cheese, it just starts to degrade. And so I get to move through cheese faster, and they're always getting fresh, good cheese whenever they need it.
Yeah, because by most measures, you're running two businesses inside of one business under one roof. I mean, I think that's kind of like how I'm seeing this, where it's even a little more than a hybrid to me. You are obviously a hybrid, and there's other hybrids out there, but the synergies, because you really are, you don't just have your toe dipped in the water here. You got 50 to 65 cheeses in your cheese program. That's not just like, oh, let's sell these as retail too, because they're on the menu. No, you have a legit menu with a legit, pretty ambitious cheese program as well. So what advice would you give to other restaurateurs considering adding a retail component, or retailers, because there's at least a couple that come to mind right now that are opening a cafe or a coffee program / cafe, and they own a cheese shop, or have in recent years, or a cheese shop that's considering adding to their establishment. What would be your advice if it's starting as a restaurant or starting as a retail that are looking to add?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I wish more people told me was ask for help.
Ask for help. Okay. Now, what do you mean by that? I mean, you're going to tell us, but what do you mean? I mean, it seems so obvious. Of course, ask for help.
It's a lot of people like to guard their secrets or their ideas, or they feel like their ideas might be silly, so they don't want to run it by people. And it's just one of those things where I love the cheese industry because it's so open and welcoming and nurturing and just kind. And where coming up in restaurants, it was cutthroat. People were sabotaging stations, throwing away mise en place because they just wanted to do it for fun or see their colleague suffer or something like that. And it's not like that in the cheese world. And so the biggest thing for me was trying to change that mindset of like, it's not every man for themselves. It's how can we make this all better? And I'm learning that the more businesses that are in our area, the better, because that means there's more reasons for people to come to the area, not just like, oh, I'd have to go to this place and then this place, and then they cut us out because it's an inconvenience. Or, having more people who know how to operate a restaurant or a cheese shop. And then that way there's less restaurants and cheese shops closing, because that's also really sad, right? And the biggest thing is people were too proud to ask for help and saying, I don't know what I'm doing, or, hey, I need a handy person. Do you know anybody? Or, hey, I'm having trouble with this cost. Like, where are you buying this from? And for me, it's not about, holding all the secrets close to my chest. It's about getting as many people to be as successful as possible. And so that's where, if you are unsure of how to do this, how to cost something, how to order XYZ, I want to be able to help as much as possible. So if you're considering doing it, just talk to as many people as possible. If they're not willing to talk to you, then they're probably not the right person to ask for help. But if you are not good at graphic design, get somebody who is good at graphic design so they can market you or help you with the logo or the branding, because I can't do everything. I can't be the accountant. I can't be the lawyer. I can't be the marketing person. And so these are all facets of the business that I have to ask for help, because otherwise I'm going to burn myself out. But also, it's not necessary that I'm reaching as many people as possible with the skills that I do know that I can do. So allowing people to help you and do what they're good at, I guess, like same thing within us. If Thomas were to come into the cheese shop and try to be a monger, he could probably do okay with it, but he's not trained. He doesn't know how. So he's going to come and ask me and say, hey, what cheese should I put on this? Or, hey, can you help this guest? It's the same thing. I hire a wine person because I know and can drink wine, but doesn't mean that I've gone through all of the education and training for it. I should hire somebody who can bring me the revenue or the sales or the know-how, the expertise that they can offer, versus me saying, I don't know, I think it's Chardonnay.
Yeah. It's spoken like a true leader, Vanessa, to me. I don't know. Maybe that's the secret sauce here, is that, a true leader will ask for help and let their team be their best, leave space to let that happen. I hope more and more of companies and restaurants that want to sell cheese and cheese shops that want to have a little food service action can draw inspiration from listening to your story. So thank you so much for joining me today, Vanessa, on Cutting the Curd to talk about what's going on with you there at Agnes Restaurant and Cheesery. And will we see you at American Cheese Society Conference in Buffalo? Or
You sure will.
Okay. So that's quite a journey from Pasadena, but hopefully, most of the industry can make it there. I know I'm looking forward to it. But Vanessa, thank you so much for being on Cutting the Curd today.
Thank you.
Come back again. All right, everyone. You can follow Vanessa and Agnes Restaurant and Cheesery at Agnes_Pasadena. You can follow us on Instagram at Cutting the Curd. You can follow Heritage Radio Network at Heritage_Radio, and follow me at Sting Chef. Please listen and subscribe to Cutting the Curd via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you enjoy the show, please give us a 5-star review. It will really help us broaden our audience. All right. Thanks again, everyone. And if you love someone, send them cheese.
Cutting the Curd is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hi, listeners. We want to tell you about a podcast we're really digging. It's called Christopher Kimball's Milk Street Radio. Every week, they travel the world to find the most fascinating stories about food, including children who harvest cod tongues after school in Norway and a detective who tracks down food thieves. And on Milk Street Radio, you can always find the unexpected. The comedian who ranks apples using an elaborate 100-point system, the secret history of grocery stores, and how to eat your way through Italy. They also interview the most beloved names in food like Jacques Pepin, Sola El-Waylly, Jose Andres, Jet Tila, Ina Garten, Nigella Lawson, and Padma Lakshmi. Plus, co-hosts Christopher Kimball and Sarah Moulton do live calls with listeners and answer their questions about ingredients, techniques, and culinary mysteries. Like, why roasting a leg of lamb made one caller's oven explode? Ever wonder why your bread won't rise or your souffle falls flat? Chris and Sarah have the answers. You'll also hear from a rotating cast of contributors, including Kenji Lopez-Alt, Cheryl Day, Dan Pashman from The Sporkful, and Alex Aynouz, a French guy cooking from YouTube. Take a listen at 177milkstreet.com/radio or just search your podcast app for Milk Street Radio.